And I wanted to take the time, the short time that I have for my remarks, to discuss with you a little bit the latest status of the SDGs. And similar to the argument that Douglas was making, why COVID-19 is making the SDGs actually more urgent, not less, and maybe also demonstrates some of the opportunities that we see in China in that regard. Now, in 2019, when the UN announced the Decade for Action for the SDGs, the Asia-Pacific region as a whole was not on track to meet any of the 17 SDGs without drastically accelerated action. And that was before COVID-19 shook the world. And I agree with Professor Fung that this pandemic is a wake-up call, in particular because it has laid bare some of the vulnerabilities and inequalities that are being created, have been created by our current growth models. And in many cases, through COVID-19, are actually now being protracted and deepened. Due to COVID-19 and this triple blow that we're seeing to income, education, and health, UNDP's latest estimates for human development show that human development for the first time in 30 years in 2020 will actually be regressing. And that's, of course, very concerning. But COVID-19, I think, is also an opportunity for transformation. And as countries begin to recover or look at their plans for recovery, I think there is a chance to change the trajectory of human development for the better. Now, to build back better, there is a whole gamut of areas, and we have discussed a lot of those already this afternoon and in the previous panels, a lot of areas that must be simultaneously addressed, from ensuring, for example, that social protection systems are inclusive and include everyone and the informal sector, from ensuring inclusive digitization for the future of work, but also in channeling private and public finance towards the SDGs. Now, I wanted to zoom in on one area, and here's another sort of convergence with the remarks of Professor Fung, and highlight the need to advance a low carbon transition to avert, in fact, another crisis that is looming, and that would make COVID-19 look pale in comparison. And I'm, of course, talking about climate change and the fact that climate change is becoming an ever increasing existential threat to humanity. It can unleash, we've seen this, ancient diseases trapped in the ice by the melting of the permafrost. We've seen anthrax returning, for example, in Siberia because of that. By 2030, we could have over 220 million people that could enter climate-induced poverty. So that's why I think we must shift to a low-carbon economy now. And the world has, in fact, already proven that this new normal is possible during the immediate response to COVID-19. We have adopted many changes like working from home or taking these type of Zoom conferences that are already reducing our footprints. But I think beyond changing practices, we must accelerate sustainable policies and investments. Now, investing in green makes economic sense. Greening energy systems could globally add 98 trillion to global GDP by 2050, with healthcare savings 8 times the cost of investments because of cleaner air. It could also quadruple renewable energy jobs to 42 million in the next 30 years. So let me now turn to China a little bit. In China, new jobs in renewables already outnumber those created in oil and gas. Last year, China invested more than 80 billion in green energy and remains the dominant renewable energy investment market. It has been so since 2013. However, of course, as all countries, more can be done. China, because of the size of its economy, still accounts for around 20% of global emissions. China's 14th five-year plan is set to focus on clean energy and cutting carbon emissions. And that can be a powerful vehicle to galvanize greener investments by promoting sound investment standards, moving away from carbon-intensive infrastructure, and by boosting sustainable investments. The new normal is also cheaper. If China uses the most cost-effective renewable energy resources, it could generate more than 60% of its electricity from non-fossil fuel-based sources at 10% less of the costs of today. Now globally, and here's the link to multilateralism, China can also support sustainable development globally and is actually becoming an increasingly important player in the global arena, including by further mobilizing capital flows for green projects, upgrading infrastructure, improving connectivity, and strengthening value chains to support the green economy at home and abroad. And of course, the BRI is an important vehicle there. I think the cooperation with UNDP and partner countries in these areas show China's readiness and willingness to share its experiences and resources in order to do so. So to conclude, let me just say, I think to me, COVID-19 is a formidable challenge, but it also presents an invaluable opportunity to push for a more inclusive and sustainable future in the spirit of the SDGs, and a planet that can support everyone and where all people benefit from development. And this will importantly also strengthen the resilience to future shocks. So in the post-COVID-19 world, I think the call on us, on the international community, is to make sure that sustainability is being shifted from being a side effect of temporary practices to a clear objective in and of itself. And that must be at the center of our recovery, because really there is no more time to lose to achieve the SDGs, to protect human development, and to safeguard life on Earth. So thank you very much for that opportunity, and very good to be with you all this afternoon.